Okay, so somebody, more than one person asked me to clarify passive hands, which I think is completely understandable. You hear people say these terms and it's like, what does that mean? It doesn't make any sense. Are my hands just barely holding the club, or what am I doing? So, first of all, what do I mean by passive hands? And I'll preface this with saying you don't have to play with passive hands. You can use your, the leveraging of the club. You can do different things. This is just one way to do it. So, if you want, I do think this is a more universal grip concept though. You want a lot of pressure right here and very little here. And the reason for that is, try it for yourself. If I hold on tight with those three fingers, I have a lot of wrist mobility. If I grip tight here, it makes my wrist less mobile. It's just the mechanics of that forearm, basically. So, grip firmly there. My personal feeling is this hand is pretty soft and not doing much. So, I'm not, again, leveraging between my hands. What I'm using my hands for is to clamp onto the club with the right orientation of my club face, and then that's done. The rest of it is I'm feeling, now my hands, what they're doing is feeling where the club head is. So I think one of the advantages to swinging with passive hands is that they have one job instead of two. So if the job of my hands is to just feel where the club head is, then that's working. If the job of my hands is to feel where the club head is and do something active, now it has two things to do. So it's more difficult to negotiate. But here's how. So the one person said, if I do that, I would hit everything to the right. So if you have a swing pattern where you go this way and either stall to square it up or actively work hard to square it up, and you try to do that with passive hands, this is what will happen. Let's see if I can do it. I'm going to swing that way. Let my hands be passive. Let me try one more because that didn't register. There it is. Indeed, it's gone straight to the right. So now, if that was my swing idea, and that's partly an idea that comes out of the idea that if I'm trying to hit the ball there, my club should go there. So I think that's not the best way to swing myself. But if I was going to swing that way, then you're right. I need to actively square up the club by either stalling or adding some force to it to get it back to square. But how would I square it if I'm not going to do that? If I'm just going to let my hands be passive, how do I square it? And let's go back to the trainer to explain it and also feel what's happening. So, in a swing that attempts to move the arms down the line toward the target, I'm going that way. Right? I'm sort of rotating back, but then I'm going that way with my arms instead of, now I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm going with my arms this way. So I'm going from here through the ball. I'm rotating everything left, but the ball's and the club head is square going that way. So I'll show you what it looks like with the club head. But feel that motion with the trainer because it's going to be different. So if you're going to do passive hands, you have to combine it with some other element, which is square the club face with your body, basically. So I'm going that way. So the feeling is I'm going to there like this. If I get to there for a partial swing, like I'm right at my hip, club is right at my hip there, that's where you want to be. So I'll show you what that looks like in a swing now. See if I can do it. And actually probably a little left. A little bit. Pretty square. So now I still have no activity in my hands, but I'm squaring the club by just basically changing the angles of my body, right? So instead of being here and open, I close my body that way. and the club comes with it. So why is this advantageous? I think the reason it's advantageous is, first of all, when you get to little shots, having passive hands gives you so much more control over distance. Right? So you're trying to hit a little 30-yard shot. If you're passive with your hands and in sync with the club, it's just much easier than trying to hit a little 30-yard shot with applying sort of that kind of force to it. Much more easy to gauge how much force you're putting into it. And then the second thing is, doesn't matter how fast I go. So I can do this move slowly. I just want a very relaxed partial swing. It's going to go down the middle pretty much. I can go sort of medium speed. Still going to be pretty much the same. I can go as hard as I want now. As hard as I can. I'll try that. As hard as I can. Nope. Wasn't ready. So I'll go as hard as I can here. So again, no activity. Oh, jeez. Let me try one more. So no activity in my hands, but I'm squaring it up with my body. So there it is, down the middle. It's not as hard as I can, but that was close to a full swing there. So there you go. So I think I think the big advantage to this method especially comes when you get down to partial shots and things, and now you have a method that works at every level of force. Whereas if you have a method that requires more timing, then when you try to get down to lesser force swings or really going at it, it throws off your timing. In this case, the timing is always the same. It's just applying more and more rotational speed basically through the ball. So that's basically the story of what I mean by passive hands. So you want to pair passive, and what I mean by passive is you're not doing anything to manipulate the club face with your hands. You're hanging on and feeling where it is and feeling the inherent timing of it, and then you're squaring the club by rotating your body more open. So some people suggest that you should do this move here. Think about that and pay attention to that, and that may very well happen, but I would suggest think about what you want to do here, and your body can figure all that out. My body won't do something that won't get me to here if this is my intention. So if my intention is to just rotate sort of low left here, my body, when I go bigger, is not going to put myself in a position where I now can't rotate low left. So it will sort that out. Keep your attention. Your task needs to be here, not I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing all these things. Your task needs to be how am I moving through the ball, and then your body sorts out all those things. And if you create a limitation now with, okay, I'm going to not use my hands to square the club face. So you create a limitation, figure out how to move through the ball to make that square, and then build that up. So if you don't create the limitation, you will not secondarily solve the problem. How do I square that if I'm not doing it like this? You need to do it sequentially. Let your hands be passive, figure out what makes it square, and then build it up into a full swing.